Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that we welcome you. The St. Anne's family welcomes you. Join us Sundays at 10 a.m.
I know who it was. So as many of you know, we are attempting to upgrade some of our stuff, so the sermons will be live streamed. The service will be live streamed on the internet. And as with any significant change, it has come with some interesting kinks. So bear with us during the many kinks that are coming. If anyone can handle kinks, it's St. Anne's. Because you handle me, so you can handle the kinks. Okay, so our gospel today. Jesus gets pretty real. And what's interesting about this gospel, well, you all know my love for Peter, right? I've had the conversation that Peter is my bro because Peter talks and Peter shouldn't. And I'm like, Peter, you're my guy. And so what has been happening, a little backstory, is Jesus is pretty popular at this point because everybody loves healer Jesus. Everybody loves sweet Jesus who is funny, he's nice, he comes in and he heals the sick, and he's getting quite a following. He's been very, very popular. And then Jesus gets real. And he starts to actually proclaim what is going to be happening. What actually is the gospel here? And I don't know if you guys have ever run into this in your life or not, but the gospel is really, really uncomfortable. And the true gospel is not popular. People don't like that. People like nice, sweet Jesus. People like healing Jesus. People like the nice things. But then when people start to hear that Jesus is going to bring about change, that you and I are going to be asked to change, and that the temple is going to be overthrown, and there are tables and there are whips everywhere, suddenly we all start to go, I don't know. I could be doing something else on my Sunday mornings, like New York Times, this thick. Starbucks, always open. There are all sorts of other things that we could be doing, and suddenly the gospel doesn't seem quite so attractive anymore, does it? And that's kind of what happens here. And Peter has really liked, because this comes right on the heels of when Peter got it right and realizes that Jesus is the Christ and this epiphany, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's true. And Peter's so excited because Peter got the answer right for once, and he's like, yeah, I knew that one. So he's on a high. And he's been following popular Jesus, which makes Peter popular too. And we all like being popular. Anywhere? No, I'm not going to ask. Normally I would ask you who likes to be popular, but let's be real. It's all of us in our own ways. I know there's some introvert out there who's like, I don't like other people and I don't want to be popular. Just keep your hand down. Anyway, so Peter's been loving this because he's riding pretty high right now. But then suddenly, Jesus gets a little bit real. And people start leaving. Suddenly, Jesus isn't quite as popular anymore, and Peter's starting to get worried because these crowds have been following them. They're starting to kind of thin out. And suddenly, people are leaving, hemorrhaging people, if you will. And it's just like a few, and Peter's getting a little bit concerned about this because, when the people leave, the giving goes down, the popularity goes down. People like Meg start going, oh, yikes. And then there's bound to be somebody who comes to Meg and says, Meg, maybe you should probably not be preaching that anymore, because have you noticed? People are leaving. So that's kind of what's going on here. And so Peter comes along to Jesus and says, you really got to stop. You got to stop. And what does Jesus say? He gets really mad at him. He gets really mad and he yells at him. Nobody saw that one coming. Jesus doesn't yell. Jesus yells. If somebody comes along to you and says, what would Jesus do? Make sure that you remind them that it could be turning over tables in a temple, it could be using whips, and it's probably going to include yelling at people. Probably maybe a little name calling in there too. Feel free to throw that out there. So this is what happens. They're over there thinking, what is she doing? Like, she's just wandering all sorts of things. I see you back there. And so this starts to get real. And the reason I think that this is such an important gospel, because they're all important, but I really like this one because it reminds us that we are the Peters. And church and the gospel are fun when they're sweet and nice and we love everybody and we like what everyone is saying and it's comfortable because we are good, affluent suburbanites and we love comfort. We all have the things that really, really tempt us. For many of us, our primary temptation is comfort. We love to be comfortable. And as long as God doesn't call us out of our comfort, we're pretty chill with the whole God thing. In fact, sometimes God will make us feel more comfortable because it will make us kind of blend in with everyone else. It pays to be a Christian. It does, quite literally. It pays to be a Christian in our society. And so it can add a level of comfort to us. That's great. We're down with that. But then when it starts to get real, when people start to actually ask us to follow the gospel, when we start to hear things in the gospel that makes us a little bit uncomfortable, what do? Somebody inevitably pulls aside and he's like, I don't know, that church over there, I don't know, they're getting kind of political. I mean, I've ever heard that one. Yeah, and it happens on all the different sides. That's a thing that you need to realize because the gospel is actually apolitical. The gospel is actually above political, and yet our go-to when we want to get mad about something and we want to trash it is I reject that reality and replace it with my own. And I therefore reject all that gospel stuff as being not true gospel because they're saying things that should not be said in churches. Chances are we probably need to listen to it. If it makes you uncomfortable, if the gospel makes your skin crawl, that's God talking to you. And instead of your first reaction, our first reaction is always to reject in anger. Always, always, always. We want to reject in anger. And yet, when you feel the need to reject something in anger, I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, where is that anger coming from? Is it an offensive anger? Is it an anger that is meant to keep you comfortable? Is it an anger that is meant to protect who you want to be in your comfort? And if it is that, then it might be time to really wrestle with that. And here's the thing. We want it to always be those people over there, don't we? Those people over there are preaching the wrong gospel. Those people over there just can't handle the gospel, right? But if we truly, 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 deeply and openly listen to the gospel, our skin will crawl. It will be so uncomfortable for us because in that true gospel, we will start to actually have to look at our stuff. And when we actually have to do that, we will be called to change. And here's the tricky thing about change. And I want us to hear this as affluent white suburbanites, because this is super important. Change will only occur when those of us who don't have to change care as much about it as those who do. I'm going to say that again because I think it's super, super important for all of us to hear. Change, true change, will only occur when those of us who don't have to care about it care as much as those who do. If we are torn between discomfort and making real change in the world, and our comfort, our popularity, our mere existence as we are, we have the urge to go with, it's not really my problem. And therefore, I shouldn't really speak about it because I can't really speak to that. That's not mine, right? And so we reject it by merely ignoring it. But the reality is when we do that, we participate in it. And we make it worse. And so what we are called to, the things that Jesus rebukes Peter about, are the very things that you and I are tempted to do. We are tempted to say, you know what? We like our church the way it is. We like our Christianity the way it is, where it's comfortable, it supports our existence and our norm. That's the way we would like it to be. Because you know what? That's attractive. And those churches grow because guess what? Jesus up until now has been very popular because people like nice Jesus. People like Jesus who comes in and heals, who supports what they've always been doing. They love it. But when it gets real, what happens? It hemorrhages because it makes people really uncomfortable to hear this stuff that's coming down the pike. And so they leave. And that's what I want us to hear, because that is our challenge as Christians in our current culture. Our challenge is to be okay with our discomfort. Our challenge is when we feel uncomfortable to turn into it and rush into that direction, because that discomfort is where God calls us to be. Because here's the trick about life, the true life, that we are all striving for so hard, right? Life is a lot like water. Put your hands up. Anyone ever played this game? You've done it with kids, right? You just got water, right? What happens when you become really desperate about something? When you really want to cling to that, what do? Right? You're in the water. What happens when you do this? Where does the water go? You can't control it. It escapes. How do you hold water? In open hands. That is the message of the gospel. That is the message of life. It will not be contained when we grasp at it, when we do things in fear and control. It will not stay. It has to be in open hands. It has to be in fearless, vulnerable, risk-taking hands that we follow the gospel. And in those open hands, in that risky moment, in that fearful moment, that's where God lies.